You were lied to about houseplants. Someone told you they clean your air. You bought 5 or 6, maybe more. Lined them up on your windowsill. And you thought you were doing something good for your lungs. You weren't. That rubber plant in your living room? It's oozing the same type of latex that triggers allergic reactions in hospitals. The chrysanthemum on your kitchen table belongs to the same plant family as ragweed. And that trailing vine your neighbor gave you? It's called devil's ivy for a reason. 5 of the most popular houseplants in the world are adding allergens, toxins, or mold spores to the air you breathe. And most of them were sold to you as air purifiers. A decent HEPA air purifier runs you $200 to $800. A rubber plant costs $15. And the internet tells you it does the same thing. One of those claims is backed by engineering data. The other is backed by blog posts. You've probably seen the pitch. NASA says houseplants clean your air. Every plant blog, every home decor article, every wellness account has repeated this, and they're all pointing back to the same place, a NASA study, where scientists put plants in sealed chambers, pumped in a chemical, and watched what happened. Some houseplants did absorb formaldehyde inside those boxes. That part is true, but those chambers were tiny, sealed shut. No doors, no windows, no HVAC cycling air. Your living room has all of those things. When researchers later calculated how much air cleaning a houseplant actually does in a normal room, the number was basically 0. Your home's natural ventilation moves more air in 10 minutes than a shelf full of plants does. In a week, you'd need hundreds of them, packed wall to wall, before they made any measurable difference. And here's the part nobody mentions. The rubber plant gets its name from the thick, milky latex sap it produces. If you've ever pruned one, or snapped a leaf, you've seen it ooze out. That sap contains proteins that are chemically similar to natural rubber latex, the same material used in medical gloves. If you have a latex allergy, touching this plant's sap can trigger the exact same reaction. Skin rashes, itching, redness, and in severe cases, breathing problems. Or even anaphylaxis. This isn't theoretical. The German Allergy and Asthma Association specifically warns that people with latex allergies should avoid the rubber plant. The proteins in the sap are close enough to surgical-grade latex that your immune system treats them as the same threat. Even without a latex allergy, the sap is a known skin irritant. Get it on your hands and you might develop contact dermatitis, a red, itchy rash at the contact point. Get it in your eyes, and it causes burning, tearing, and temporary, blurred vision. If a child or pet chews on a leaf, the sap can cause pain and swelling in the mouth, drooling, vomiting, and digestive distress. And yet, this is the plant people put in their bedrooms because a blog told them it purifies the air while they sleep. So the rubber plant's real risk is its sap, not its air cleaning ability. The next one attacks differently. It fills your home with pollen. And it's related to one of the worst allergy triggers on the planet. Your eyes are watering. Your nose won't stop running. It's the middle of winter. Ragweed season ended months ago. And you can't figure out why your allergies are acting up. Meanwhile, that pot of chrysanthemums on your kitchen table is quietly dumping pollen into the air. Chrysanthemums belong to the Asteraceae family. That's the same plant family as ragweed, mugwort, daisies, and chamomile. They share enough protein similarity that your immune system can cross-react between them. If you're someone who suffers through ragweed season every fall, A chrysanthemum in your kitchen could trigger similar symptoms indoors. Any time of year. The cross-reactivity is best documented between chrysanthemum and mugwort pollen. A Korean study looking at nearly 6,500 respiratory allergy patients found that about 10% were sensitized to chrysanthemum, and most of those patients were also sensitized to mugwort. The two pollens share enough allergenic proteins that if your body reacts to one, there's a good chance it reacts to the other. And since mugwort cross-reacts with ragweed, the chain goes all the way back. Most houseplants don't produce much airborne pollen. That's the good news about indoor plants in general. But chrysanthemums are different. They carry high levels of pollen in just about every part of the flower. When those blooms dry out, or when you brush against them while watering, that pollen goes airborne. In your kitchen, your living room, wherever you keep them. There's another layer. The leaves, stems, and flowers contain compounds called sesquiterpene lactones. These are the chemicals behind contact dermatitis in people who handle plants in the Asteraceae family. Touch the plant with bare hands over time, and you might develop a rash that keeps coming back. And here's the part that makes it worse. Once you become sensitized to one plant in this family, your immune system often starts reacting to others. Daisies, sunflowers, chamomile, marigolds. The sensitivity can spread across the whole family, and just like the rubber plant, the chrysanthemum got swept into the NASA air purifier story. It was part of the original 1989 study, and it did absorb some chemicals in a sealed chamber. But the same rules apply. Sealed box. Zero ventilation. Nothing like your home. The air cleaning claim doesn't survive real-world conditions. So you've got a plant that doesn't clean your air, fills your home with pollen that can trigger ragweed-like reactions, and can cause a spreading skin sensitivity across an entire plant family. Pretty flower, though. The chrysanthemum attacks through pollen and skin contact. The next plant works differently. The problem isn't the bloom or the sap, it's what's happening in the pot. A research team at the University of Georgia tested what common houseplants actually release into the air, not what they absorb, what they put out. They placed plants in filtered chambers and captured every volatile compound that came off them. The snake plant released 12 volatile organic compounds, some from the plant's own metabolism, some from pesticide residues left over from the nursery, some from the microorganisms living in the soil. 12 chemicals, going into the room where you sleep while you thought it was cleaning your air. People put snake plants in bedrooms specifically because they read somewhere that it converts carbon dioxide to oxygen at night. And technically, it does. Most plants only do this during the day. The snake plant keeps going after dark. Sounds great on paper. What they left out is that this plant also releases its own cocktail of chemicals around the clock. But the bigger issue with the snake plant, and honestly, with every plant on this list, is the pot. Potting soil is loaded with organic material: peat, bark, compost, dead plant matter. All of it feeds microorganisms living in the dirt, and those microorganisms release their own volatile compounds right into your room. Some of the chemicals the researchers detected didn't come from the plant at all. They came from the soil. Now add water. Overwater any houseplant, and that damp soil becomes a breeding ground for mold. You'll see white, gray, or greenish fuzz on the surface. Sometimes you won't see anything at all. But the spores are there. For a healthy adult, small amounts of soil mold are usually fine. But if you have asthma, allergies, or a compromised immune system, those spores can trigger coughing, wheezing, and flare-ups that seem to come out of nowhere. push your indoor humidity above 50%, which is easy to do in a room packed with several plants, and mold growth speeds up on every surface, not just the soil, your walls, your window frames, your carpet. The American Lung Association specifically calls out overwatered houseplants as a contributor to poor indoor air quality. Their advice is simple: proper drainage, airflow around your pots, and never let containers sit in standing water. If you're still with me, the next one is worth the wait. It's probably the most popular houseplant in the world, and its common name should have been a warning from the start. Those heart-shaped leaves, the way it trails over a shelf or spills out of a hanging basket. Pothos is the plant people recommend when you say you've never kept a plant alive. It handles low light, it handles neglect, it grows in water, it grows in dirt. It's basically unkillable, which is why it's everywhere. Offices, dorm rooms, kitchens, bathrooms. If there's a houseplant in the room, there's a good chance it's a pothos. Its other name is devil's ivy. And that name isn't just cute branding. Every part of this plant, leaves, stems, roots, contains tiny needle-shaped crystals called calcium oxalate. Picture microscopic shards of glass embedded in the tissue of the plant. When something bites into a leaf, those crystals pierce the skin, the mouth, the throat. If a child chews on a pothos leaf, the symptoms start within minutes. Burning in the mouth, swelling of the lips and tongue, drooling, difficulty swallowing. In very rare and extreme cases, the swelling could potentially affect the airway. These incidents are uncommon and rarely life-threatening, but they're enough to send you to an emergency room. For pets, it's the same story. The ASPCA lists pothos as toxic to both cats and dogs. A cat that bats at a trailing vine and chews on a leaf can develop oral pain, excessive drooling, vomiting, and refusal to eat. And here's the thing that makes pothos tricky. The vines trail, they hang, they drape down toward the floor, which is exactly where toddlers and pets live. You can put it on a high shelf, but the moment those vines grow long enough to dangle within reach, you've got a problem. The plant won't poison you through the air. This isn't a VOC issue like the snake plant. The danger is physical contact, especially ingestion. But in a home, with kids or animals, that's a real risk, and most people never think about it. Because the internet told them pothos is a beginner-friendly air purifier. Golden pothos was part of the original 1989 NASA study. Same sealed chamber test, same results that don't apply to your home. The irony of this one gets to me. You buy a plant, the internet says, is safe and good for your air. You hang it above your kid's play area because it looks nice. Nobody told you the leaves are lined with microscopic needles. That's your living room. Now, let's look at the one hiding in your kitchen or bathroom, the plant people buy specifically to fight mold. There's a claim floating around the internet that English ivy reduces airborne mold spores by up to 78%. That number comes from a 2005 experiment, where researchers put moldy bread in a sealed container with English ivy and measured the spore count dropping. Same setup as the NASA study. Sealed container. Controlled conditions. Nothing like your actual bathroom. People raid that number. Buy an English ivy and hang it in the dampest room in their house. They think they're fighting mold with a plant. What they're actually doing is making the problem worse. English ivy needs consistent moisture. The soil stays damp. And damp organic soil, as we've covered already, is exactly where mold loves to grow. So you buy a plant to fight mold. You water it regularly because that's what ivy needs, and you create the perfect conditions for mold to thrive in the pot. The very problem you're trying to solve. You just fed. It doesn't stop there. After a hot shower, your bathroom humidity spikes well past 50%. Add a moisture-loving plant to that environment, and the excess humidity doesn't stay in the pot. It migrates to walls, window frames, ceilings. Condensation builds up. Mold colonies establish in places that have nothing to do with the plant. Your $12 ivy just created a $100 mold problem. And there's one more thing. English ivy sap is a skin irritant. The leaves and berries contain a compound called heterin, a toxic saponin. Touch it with bare hands, and you might get a rash. If a child or a pet chews on it, the symptoms get serious fast. Vomiting, breathing difficulty, and in rare cases, worse. You brought it home to clean your air. If you don't manage it carefully, every drop of water you give it works against you. 5 plants, 5 problems nobody talks about, because the plants clean your air story is too comfortable to question. But the air purification claim? Wildly overstated. For some of these species, completely backwards. If you want cleaner indoor air, the answer is boring. But it works. Open your windows more often. If ventilation isn't an option, get a HEPA air purifier. Those actually do what you were told your plants would do. So here's my question. Which of these 5 do you have in your home right now? And have you noticed anything? A cough, congestion, scratchy throat that you couldn't quite explain? Drop it in the comments, subscribe. Nature has answers. This is Root Remedy.